Hello and welcome, everyone. So at this very moment, it's 1:06 p.m. on the 27th of March, 2025. And in order to operate as wisely and effectively and successfully as possible, as always, we should clearly identify our real-time actual position within the cycles of life. So, first of all, one should actually have a basic overview of a maximum of, shall we say, 7 different life cycles. And that, shall we say, every couple of hours. So, this is starting with the daily period of 3 hours and 25 minutes, then the short lunar unit and the long lunar unit, and then the annual life cycle period that you're in, and then this simple overall period of human life that you're in. And you should have an overview of your soul personality too. Okay, so first of all, let's identify exactly where we are right now within the cycles of life. What cycles of life are we actually in right now? And even, in till, let's say, 1:42 p.m. today, right? For the next 40 minutes or so, we know exactly what is to be done and what isn't to be done. In other words, because of the time frames and the windows of opportunity within certain time frames, within certain life cycles, we can navigate accurately and effectively and safely and actually accomplish good things as we go, versus the opposite. So see this? It's like, what is it? 1:07 p.m. Okay, 27th of March, 2025, Thursday, early afternoon. Daily period right now of the cycles of life. And we're going looking at the shortest cycles from short to long. We're going to look at about 8 or 7 or 9 different cycles, actually. Generally, though, about 7. Yeah. Okay. Today, right now, the first cycle to look at is the daily period of 3 hours and 25 minutes, where there are 7 a day, right? So that one right now is an A period. From 10:17 a.m. to 1:42 p.m. on a Thursday, it's an A period. So we're actually in an A period right now, till 1:42 p.m. So for another 38 so minutes, right? Okay, that's good to know that, because every period, even every daily period, is propitious for certain things and not propitious for other things. And so you just simply seek to accomplish the right things, and it works. Versus the opposite, okay? So it's like knowing the right course of action to take versus the wrong or ineffective one. Okay. So daily period A right now for another 35 minutes or so. Then the next cycle to look at is a short lunar unit. Short lunar unit is what manifests itself as either a high tide or a low tide in the nearest maritime port. Now, before I go into detail and explain why this is important, I'm just going to mention the fact that at this very moment, we actually have a low tide at the nearest maritime port at 1:47 p.m. It's interesting because the daily period ends at 1:42 p.m. And you always allow about 10 minutes for that to fully end and the next one to be established, right? So if we had an A period from 10:17 to 1:42 p.m. on a Thursday, and then from 1:42 p.m. to 5:08 p.m. on a Thursday, we have a B period. So it's like there's a 10-minute area of overlapping. You wait 5 minutes for one to end, and for 5 minutes, another 5 minutes for the next period to be established. It's interesting that the tide is also emptying out completely and reaching its lowest point. There's a low tide right at the time when the periods change. It's actually very practical, because it's actually rather practical. So it seems like it's a coincidence. Okay, So the short lunar unit is the tide being either, it manifests itself as a high tide or a low tide. The next one, like we said, is in about 30 minutes. So we have a low tide in 30 minutes. That equates that we're actually currently in a negative short lunar unit because there's a lowering tide. There's a decrease of surge. It's like opposite of an increase where it would be a peaking high tide at a certain time. So it's a negative short lunar unit. Okay, next thing to look at is long lunar unit of 3.5 days. Long lunar unit of 3.5 days, because we have a full moon on the 29th of March, that is basically next Saturday, so it's in 2 days from now, about 11:55 a.m. here, we have a new moon. So 3.5 days before a new moon, you have a positive short lunar unit. A positive long lunar unit. So the short one we just talked about with the tide emptying out in about 30 minutes, that short lunar unit combined with a positive long one equals the fact that we are currently within a neutral lunar unit for the next 30 minutes. Because that changes too. Once the tide is then emptied out and then begins to increase again, it'll go from a neutral to a positive. Wait a second. Yeah, a neutral. So in a neutral lunar unit right now, what does that actually equate? Okay, what it's saying is that the energy in the universe and that has an effect on Earth, human, and life activity in this area that we're in, where, okay, yes, we may be 200 miles or more from the nearest maritime port that has accurate tidometer readings that indicates to us what the tides are doing, and thus what the lunar unit is, either negative or positive, right? It's like we can see at hand. We can see by what the ocean is doing. You can see what the moon is actually having, what effect the moon is having on Earth and human life activity at this time. And this does also reach, it would be more accurate if you're directly at the ocean at a particular place where the tides are being measured, like 50 feet from you, right there. There's a tidometer. It's pretty accurate. You're right there. But still, the readings are sufficient enough for us to utilize, and you're supposed to utilize the nearest maritime location to wherever you are to use that tide chart to see what the lunar units are. And it does have an effect over a large area, okay? Even if you're inland, you still use the readings from the nearest maritime port to identify the lunar units. And they, like I said, express themselves in either high or low tides. Okay, so the next cycle to pay attention to is annual life cycle period. Every day, starting on your birthday, for 365 days, there are 7 different annual life cycle periods of 52 days approximately in length, wherein it is propitious for certain things in health, personal, and business life, and you should seek to accomplish these particular things, wherefore it is propitious and not other things. So you start to see that we have a perfect system that shows us exactly how to operate and live and prosper and benefit to the max, right? So then the next cycle to pay attention to is your simple overall period of human life. Human being is born, takes his or her first breath, and that's when their life cycle begins, the very moment they take their first breath. And then the human being can live up to 144 years. Now, from 0 to 144, there are units of 7 years. And based on whatever age you are, you're within one of these units. And so there's a time when you can read all about this in a book. I'll explain it to you in a second. So then the next cycle to pay attention to is your soul personality. Well, that's like a cycle. It's generally based on the day when you were born, the moment of your birthday, the time, date, hour, minute, month, day, year, right? You have a certain soul personality. And this is just something that is like basically permanent for a certain amount of time. In this lifetime, right, from 0 to 144 years, you do have a definite soul personality with certain strengths and certain particular pluses, right? Good things that you've been given by the Creator to utilize, and a certain purpose, right? You should focus on that and work with that instead of something else that just isn't your calling, right? So what is that? The daily period, the short lunar unit, the long lunar unit, the annual life cycle period, the simple period of overall human life, and then your soul personality. Okay, it's approximately 6 cycles. And to be more precise, it's actually 9, because the annual life cycle period includes personal, health, and business annual life cycle period, right? So it's actually 9 cycles. Yet generally, most of the time, what you're going to be looking at is the daily period of 3 hours, 25 minutes that you're in. Then you're going to be looking at the short lunar unit. What are the tides doing, right? What state is the universe in around us based on what's happening at the nearest ocean port in terms of an increase, a rising, is the tide rising or is it lowering? And based on that, you can actually already basically estimate and see what the energy in the universe around you is doing in terms of whether it's on an increasing upward curve, where now if you take action on something, you're going to basically be propelled automatically, versus it being more difficult to take action on something because it's the energy is like in a decreasing state rather than an increasing state. So it's like if you feel so-called sluggish and you feel like taking a nap all of a sudden, well, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be because at the nearest ocean port with the tidometer, if you were to check, you may be surprised to see that actually when you start to feel, like I feel right now, actually, you notice I'm not processing and operating and expressing things as fast and as ideal as I usually could, even while making this vlog. Well, I know why that's the case. I know why I feel the way I feel. I know why things are the way they are right now. It's because of the state that the universe is in right now. It's because of the cycles of life that we're in right now. And also very evidently and simply recognizably, the lunar unit we're in right now, where, like I said, for the next 25 minutes or so, approximately 25 minutes approximately, yeah, we've got a decreasing tide. So like I actually feel like going and taking a nap right now, even though it's the middle of the day and I'm pushing myself to stay up, be awake during the day and rest during the nighttime. So knowing these things, right, we can optimize and actually live and move and operate the best possible way, because it's like we're in harmony with the cycles of life. Because here's the thing, see, let's say you're trying to build a house or something. So if you're feeling so tired while you're doing that, it's obviously, it would be better that you were energetic and amped when you're going to go build this house. You can focus on the details, do everything right. And so the entire process is easier. Well, the reason why it's easier at certain times is because there's positive and negative units, cycles ranging, like I said, ranging from anywhere from 3 hours to 25 minutes to 7 years, and a lot in between too, because you see, generally though, what you have to look at, and this is actually highly relevant, because see, if you pay attention to this, your life becomes a joyride, basically. because everything works so much better and steadier and more sustainably and calmer and also lighter and easier than otherwise. Because, see, look, let's say that you need to do something like, let's say you set out to climb a mountain now. This is a serious thing. Safety is the number one priority. You have to be able to make sure that you're going to make it to the top of this mountain and return safely. So if you now set out at the right time to climb this mountain, you will easily climb it safely. You'll reach the top and you'll return safely because you were doing this at a time when it was propitious for this particular thing. Now, there's another time when you could set out to climb this mountain and there is a high probability, and this has happened before, that there will be an accident in the process. What if we could? And did you know that we can? And now you know that. We can actually know these things beforehand by simply paying attention to the cycles of life in nature and the systematic way that nature works. So, for example now, let's say there's some task that's important that you really got to make sure it works so that, you benefit, you legitimately make money, you have financial resources coming in, and so on and so forth. So what you have to do is you got to time your operation correctly so that it's in harmony with the cycles of life that you're in. And so you'll be working on the right thing and it will be easily accomplished in comparison to lesser degree of success or even perhaps failure and a restarting. So it's like you have these I got to talk about these lunar short and long units because these make an immense difference in what happens. So, for example, let's say we're in a positive short lunar unit and in a positive long lunar unit. So what does this actually look like in reality? A double positive lunar unit, right? What a double positive lunar unit is, this is when it's 3 hours before that next high tide. So you're in a 3-hour time frame before the next high tide, when the tide is high again. And when it's a positive 3.5 day lunar unit, like, for example, 3.5 days before a full moon, or 3.5 days before a new moon. And then, essentially speaking, a double positive unit will generate, remember, everything's always moving and gradually sort of moving on, yet you can map this anytime. Say you have so first of all, it's 3 hours before a high tide, right? So there's this 3-hour window here we're looking at specifically. Look ahead for this, right? And then you have a 3.5 day positive long lunar unit. So that equates to, for 3.5 days, you're in a positive space, and there is an alternating positive and negative short space of time that's going on. That's the short lunar unit. Now, when you have the short lunar unit, and you actually you identify the positive one within a long positive one, that's going to be a time frame of about 3 hours. Now, this time frame, based on what daily period it is in, because remember, you also have a daily period of 3 hours and 25 minutes that constantly goes from A to G. There are 7 of them a day, right? So if you identify the proper daily period of 3 hours and 25 minutes to accomplish a certain thing in, wherefore it is propitious at that time, and it also happens to be within those 3 hours of that 3 hour, 25 minute daily period, it's also a short positive unit, like 3 hours before a high tide, and it's during a 3.5 day positive long lunar unit, you're looking at a window of opportunity that is like a time frame where basically miracles can be made to happen because of the following realistically and scientifically proven and understandable fact of the matter. And what that is this. In that double positive lunar unit, there's a super high amount of a positive, energetically masculine and a positive, life-giving, increasing, providing energy present in the universe and the world around you at that time. And it's because of, and you can see this on the physical level, where that's just the time before the tide peaks. So it's just before the highest point of the curve. So there's an increase going on. It reaches a maximum point. And just 3 hours before that high tide peaks, that maximum point is reached, there's a super increase going on. There's an increase, like a building up going on. And if you utilize that window of opportunity, that time frame for a particular thing, a good thing, something that is legit, and you could use it for anything technically, though remember that we reap what we sow. If you utilize this window for a particular thing, something magnificent or great will happen, because you're getting a super good increase at that time. This is like the time when like a miracle could be made to happen. Something miraculous, apparently miraculous, could occur. Some good thing in business life, personal life, health life, whatever it is, there's time that this really good thing can happen right there. Like from 0 to 1,000,000 right there. Things like this. Okay. Big upgrades in personal life, business life, health life, major upgrades, major wins, major victories, big things that are good things. But see, if you actually know this beforehand, just imagine how accurate you can then operate and live and actually prosper. And what I'm talking about, what I've spoken about is something that I have done this many times, and I do it all the time. I know what I'm talking about from real life experience. That's why I'm emphasizing what I'm saying, because it's true. I've done it. It works. So like the idea is that, okay, right. And now getting to the main final point of this presentation is the following fact, okay? So we're talking about the lunar units a lot here. And the reason why is, listen, I had actually realized yesterday that I have to wait till the new moon before I launch any new major operations here, any major projects. And it's still 2 days. So I've been so motivated to do things now, and I realized, wait, no, I actually have to wait, because it is simply not the ideal time just yet. And this is true. You will actually discover this. So I got to emphasize one thing. And my dad, rest in peace, he used to always say, wait till the new moon. Wait till the new moon before you start something new. Yeah, it's actually true. It's actually correct, because somehow or other, the moon is like an indicator of sort of like almost like the amount of charge that is, it's as if the moon is like an indicator. It's like a visible, it could be like if we were in an airplane and you had dials that show you like what's going on. It's like the moon could be looked at as a meter that indicates, uh, what the charge or the energetic providence in the universe around you, what state it is in, whether it's in a decreasing or an increasing state, and how high or how low it is. It's actually true. And the proof for this is that, and you may notice this, that always, everywhere you go on Earth, just think about like a couple days before the full moon, a couple of days or more. There's just a lot of activity. There's people out, it's busy, there's a ton of activity going on. 7 days before the full moon, even especially though on the day of the full moon, that time frame, it's like you can see the difference. You should pay attention to this, you'll see the difference. And then on a new moon, things are quiet again. It's obvious. I've observed this for years. Okay, so if you look at what the moon is doing, or actually what it's indicating that's going on, it's like you can use this as a meter to actually identify what will happen if you take a certain action. So what does this look like? Well, look, I'll explain this to you now. I myself intend to make hopefully 5,000 or more within the next 35 to 40 days, right? Ideally speaking. So obviously I have to think about, okay, where am I going to apply and where will I be able to get hired and perform work that I'll be able to perform as, in a very good way, and then also generate financial wealth for myself, right? So in other words, I have to send applications to different companies. I have to get an interview with them, and I have to get hired, and I have to make money, right? So how do you do this now so that it will work though? Look, at this very moment, and actually this information is relevant to you, the viewers, because I'm going to upload this in probably half an hour from now. And by the time it's on the internet, it will still be relevant for you. Because we do have a new moon coming up in 2 days. And you should be prepared with this good information to utilize this. So what's happening is, see, if I were to go and do these things now, before the new moon, I actually realized this the other day, was that it's like right now, things are like ending. In the universe, it's like things are they're going to a minimal, it's almost like if you looked at the moon, it's getting empty and empty till it's zeroed out and then it's new. So there's actually like there's a decrease to the most minimal level going on right now till the right before the new moon, and then it's a new clean slate, and then there's an increase going on again as the moon is then already just turned new and then starts to, become fuller. If you look at that, it's like a meter, it's like a gauge that shows you whether there is an increasing or a decreasing tendency and cosmic quality in the universe around you, and whether or not that is in a positive or a negative state. So, like in other words, my hunch and intuition told me that, okay, if I send an application today to this place, it's still a day or two before the new moon. This whole thing is being launched at a time when there is a decreasing going on and a zeroing out then. Like we're at like 2% right now. Tomorrow we're at 1%. And on Saturday, we're at 0%. And then Saturday, there's a new moon at approximately noon, right? And then it goes from like 0 to 0.1% and 2%, and there's an increase again. So you could look at this as a curve on a graph and see that, okay, if I'm going to invest in something, if I'm going to start something new, you should do it right after the full moon, the new moon, because at that point you're riding on, and see, there's like an energy, the way that energy is, the quality that the energy around us is in, and that the the tendency that it's in is either increasing or decreasing. So like right after this new moon, actually what's going on is that the energy in the universe is like, it's first of all, it's like a totally clean slate to work with. And then it's just begun to increase, and it's on an increasing projection. It's on an increasing curve all the way up till then, approximately, 14 days later, you have the full moon again. So it's better to launch something new, to start something new while you're riding this curve of increase, of gradual increase from, let's say, 0 to 100, than being at point number 2 just before 0 again when it resets on the new moon. So it makes sense. And this makes more and more sense to me, and I've observed this, and it's actually, it's accurate. The lunar unit that you're in at a certain time actually indicates to you what type of an energy is not what type, what state the energy. See, as a general rule, there's always a certain amount of basic divine providence in the universe and a certain amount of life-giving energy that's like operational and everything. But there are varying degrees of this. And there's also like the lunar units show us within certain time frames, like that of the time between a low tide or a high tide, right? Or 3.5 days before a full moon, or 3.5 days before a new moon, etc. They show us basically what is going on in the universe in terms of that, almost like the life force is in a. See, because the life force is always there. It's always there. Yet it seems to go through cycles of steadily increasing to a certain, starting new, steadily increasing to a certain point of fullness. That's from the new moon to the full moon, and then from the full moon again into a decreasing mode, till it then finally resets and bottoms out and resets again. Although it's like, I can't say now, I'm not saying that the life force and the energy in the universe itself actually like goes in and out of existence. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the state that the universe is in and the amount of energy that's sort of almost like what the life force and the energy that provides us all is going through is like either negative or positive units of increase or decrease, and then resetting at certain points, generally speaking. Because, like, for example, you as a human, you're standing there, you look at the full moon, you see the full moon. You look at the empty new moon, and then the new moon, you see that too. You're still alive all the time. It's just that there's the energy that has an effect on what happens in Earth human life activity. It is visibly readable in the state that it's in, whether at a 0 and a reset, and like a new moon, 0, reset, increasing to full moon, maximum again, and then decreasing to the new moon again. You can read what's going on. So, for example, now take the moment of the new moon as the time when you would begin something new. You would send an application somewhere. You would introduce yourself somewhere, make an appearance, maybe start something new, initiate some type of a new creative process, right? And inevitably, it's going to be started and began at the right time, and then like right after this new moon, you start something new. You plant this new seed in the ground, right? And it has been launched at a time. It has began This thing has begun at the ideal moment where it is now going to get a full measure of increase from the lowest amount to the highest amount possible. And what is that? It's going to basically happen within the time frame between a new moon and a full moon. My dad, rest in peace, he also told me, he said, whatever it is that you've been working on or what you're looking at making happen or having manifest, it usually will present itself or manifest itself just before the full moon or on the full moon or even perhaps a few days after the full moon. And that makes perfect sense if we were to look at life and look at the fact that it's like, for me to grow a tree, right? The energy is there so that if I plant it on a new moon, I plant these seeds on a new moon, and then it just, everything is getting bigger and bigger. The moon is, this energy or whatever is visibly increasing, and there's this life-giving increasing force till the full moon again. Then that would be the time when things can grow the maximum amount, right? From the new to the full moon. And then, there's a decrease again from the full to the new. Yet this is actually really true. It's correct. And you can observe this even by paying attention to human activity around you at different times. On the day of a new moon, you'll go to a restaurant and it's almost empty. And a day before the full moon, it's completely packed. It's just how it is. You can see this anywhere. So this is some good information to utilize, because guess what? It sure is practical if I know beforehand that if I send an application to this company, they're going to call me soon, and I'm going to go to work soon, and I'm going to be making money soon, right? Rather sooner than later. So these things that have to be accomplished can be accomplished at certain times with a certainty, with a basic amount of certainty, and much more guaranteed effectivity and success as a result of whatever your life's goals and objectives are, being successful than otherwise. Like, I can go and apply somewhere and go to work somewhere and make a ton of money somewhere with almost absolute certainty if I do it at the right time. And so should you.